Welcome to The Technology Pill, a podcast that looks at how technology is reshaping our lives every day and exploring the different ways that governments and companies use tech to increase their power. My name is Gus Hossain, and I'm the Executive Director of Privacy International.
I'm Caitlin, and I'm PI's Campaigns Officer. Hello. Before we get started, let's quickly address what you've probably already noticed, which is we have a new theme song. If you haven't already noticed, maybe this is your first episode, in which case, welcome to the podcast. We hope you have a nice time. Our old theme song was by Sepia. Our new theme song is also by Sepia. I think all the music pretty much we use in the podcast is by Sepia at this point. And if you haven't checked him out, you definitely should. He's fantastic. It's called Love Letter, and we hope you enjoy it.
For this podcast, we are commemorating the very sad moment where Yahoo Answers is being shut down.
Internet history being kind of lost, although I think the Internet Archive, Wayback Machine, have said they'll archive the site, so it won't be lost forever, for all time, like some of GeoCities was.
So tell me, does this mean Yahoo no longer exists, or is it just Yahoo Answers?
This is just Yahoo Answers. I do wonder if it's like the beginning of the end for Yahoo. Yeah, they've had a weird, rough few years. Do they even still own Tumblr anymore? I think they sold Tumblr.
I'm not even sure Tumblr is a thing still anymore, is
Tumblr
it?
is still a thing.
Oh.
I've heard Tumblr described as like the ghostly fairground, the haunted fairground on the other side of town. But it does still exist, although in a much, much smaller form than from before Yahoo got its hands on it and did the great porn ban, the most recent round of kind of porn banning, I guess, on fandom services. But yeah, but just kind of see what we're going to miss, the kind of great caliber of content that's on Yahoo Answers. I trawled the computers and internet section to see if there are any questions that we can help with. Nice. I think we've missed the window for uploading the answers that we have. By the time this comes out, I think, at minimum, it will no longer be editable, but I think it might actually be down by the time that you're hearing this. But no, we thought we'd see if there are any that we can help out with. Some of these are more serious than others. The first one that I found made me so happy, and it's from 2 months ago, and someone called Psycho Solo Diver asked, in computers and other internet, what was social media like during World War II? Did either side censor what could be posted? The favourite answer is also really sweet because it's completely like straight face down the line. Favourite answer by Lord Bacon, level 7, is there was no social media in World War II. Both sides censored private letters and had laws about what could be publicly disclosed. People could write to national newspapers in the hope their letter would be published, but it was up to the newspaper to apply its own publication standards and to comply with the law. It's like, bless your heart, Lord Bacon. I appreciate you.
I hope Lord Bacon finds a very good home on the internet after.
Somewhere like Quora. I don't really know the next answer service.
The geek in me was wondering, was there an analogy to social media at the time? And the story I keep on going back to is when people would try to use radio and broadcast radio, often behind enemy lines, and how you would have vans driving around neighborhoods trying to detect the emission of radio transmitters to see if there's somebody from the other side behind enemy lines. And where that gets interesting in a post-World War II environment is when I moved to this country, I live in the UK, there were stories about vans driving around neighborhoods to detect whether or not you have a television in order to find you. The van can't detect whether or not you have the license. The van, apparently, with this thing on the roof that turns around doing some kind of theater, could detect whether or not you are using a television. That kind of just blows my mind. But some technologies just die very hard.
Yeah, I've never seen one of those. Next question from ? asked in Computers and Other Internet also about a month ago, do you allow cookies when you surf? More sites are putting up cookie walls than ever. And again, I really do appreciate the top answer, which is no, they get all soggy when you fall in the sea from F, level 7. Which I think is probably, that surf is a kind of, I guess, old-fashioned way of saying you hang out on the internet.
Oh, don't say that, Caitlin.
You surf the waves.
Are you saying that people don't use the term surf anymore?
I don't think they do.
Oh, God. Maybe I should be the person answering the question about World War II. I'm starting to feel really old.
I think it's from like the 90s, like hackery movie things with the kids on the, no, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say surf the web since like
No,
primary
you're right.
school.
I guess you're right. Maybe I just don't talk about it. Maybe we don't surf I don't know. I just feel horribly old.
So do you want to explain what cookies are? I mean, I kind of don't know if listeners know. I assume they know to an extent, but do you want to give a quick just in case?
Well, I made the wrong assumption that listeners know what surfing is. Yeah, so cookies are like an ancient 1990s technology where a website, when you visit a website that's serving to you content, it allows that website to insert a very small file on your computer, on your browser, and it's called a cookie file, that the next time you revisit that site, it can use to detect that you were there before. So it might have an identifier saying that you were here 3 weeks before. And then on the website side, they could then say, and 3 weeks before when you were here, you did all these other things. It was a clever idea in 1990 just to allow sites to remember you and to manage your accounts. But then the advertising industry got their fingers on these cookies and started creating what are now called third-party cookies. And this allows a website, like when you visit a website, traditionally only that website would give you a cookie. Now when you go to websites, they can issue cookies from third parties. The classic example was when you went to the New York Times website, you would get cookies from like 17 different organizations because the New York Times would want to help those organizations track you as you go across the internet so that advertisements can be basically served to you. Then there are laws that came along that said, no, you can't do this without gaining people's consent, unless it's first party. And even then, you should be notifying and gaining consent. And so that's when the industry, the assholes that they are, decided to facetiously implement this by throwing up bucket loads of consent mechanisms where it's just far easier to say yes than to say no to the 8,000 options that just show how much of an asshole they are. But it would just be easier if you just said yes and let them go back to their regular business, which is not what I would ever recommend, but that's what they have set it up to do.
Yeah, and increasingly people have done research into dark patterns, which are like really sneaky ways of trying to manipulate you to say like, accept all and then kind of keep rolling with the version that they want. You see it in other places other than cookies where services try and make it really hard for you to unsubscribe, and that's this kind of in cookie form. I know there's one add-on that has been recommended to me that I haven't looked into that much to take with a pinch of salt called Consent-O-Matic, which goes through and kind of fills these forms in for you. It only knows some of them, but if it recognizes one, it will go, oh, okay, yeah, you don't want these, and fill in these little forms for you, which just should make your life a tiny bit easier. But yeah, the consent thing was supposed to make the internet nicer, and has made it in some ways more burdensome, which is not ideal.
Yeah, I know. So as a result, like I end up using multiple browsers for multiple purposes. I use porn mode a lot. And sorry, I shouldn't use that term. Incognito is what Chrome calls it, and
private browsing is what Firefox calls it.
That's right. And these are modes of using your browser where it doesn't retain any history. So I don't mind logging in repeatedly on the sites where I have to log in, but most sites I can just get by without having to worry about any of those things. So I'll go in porn mode and just hit yes, and it's fine because it won't remember me the next time. the catch is the bastards are winning, except they're not. Like, cookies are dying as a standard because of all this pain, but the alternatives don't look particularly promising either. And the EFF's done some really good analyses recently of some of the alternatives being promoted by Google, the company that has the most to gain and lose by decisions around internet advertising and tracking.
And they're doing weird things to Chrome. But yeah, the EFF will post some links in the description about that. So the next question is actually a type that I saw quite frequently, strangely. This one was asked by Wesley in Computers and Internet Software 4 weeks ago. Is the upcoming COVID vaccine still in its trial phase? Is there any vaccine against COVID that has been perfected and is not a safety risk? And again, the top answer, Chris Anker, level 7, coming at you with, they are all perfectly safe to expose your computer to, which is true. Well, it's not true. They're liquid. I'm not sure you'd want to pour one on your keyboard, but I really like these questions. There were a ton of questions about COVID in Computers and Internet Software, and they ran the kind of range from, why does my dad pronounce COVID like Corvid? I don't know. He might actually be talking about the breed of birds. Breed? They're not breed. The type of bird, like ravens. Maybe you're just talking at cross purposes. I don't know. That one's a weird one. Yeah, it was just a weird range of questions. And I think, and this was the one where I realised why, and I think virus is what has done it. I don't know if it's Yahoo's own funneling systems, if it's people getting confused, and there's maybe a drop-down for virus that tells you where you should be putting things, but I genuinely think it's people confusing virus like coronavirus with virus like computer virus. Which I don't know if it says a lot about Yahoo as a service we're losing, but I just found quite funny and quite sweet. The good news is there are several COVID vaccines that are out of the trial phase and in use, though as with all medicines, I don't know if any are completely perfectly risk free, but they're pretty safe. You know, they're pretty safe, fairly comfortable. Say many have been recommended by many different medical agencies, and they're pretty safe.
Look, if 4 out of 5 dentists agree on the use of dentine in order to make your teeth better, then safety risk is hard to assess. But I think the consensus is that there are risks, and there are real risks, and this is a mild risk. But yeah, I would never use the word perfected either. But oh well.
So the next question is also a COVID one, but it's not quite as specific. It's, again, a slightly strange place for it to be, but Sargent asked in Computers and Internet Software 2 weeks ago, can we consider COVID-19 as examples of social change?
What?
Right, so I think the answer is no. COVID in itself is not an example of social change. But what I think is interesting about this one is I think we can say that COVID potentially will be a cause, progenitor, you know, there may be some social change thanks to COVID. And what I thought was interesting about this question is it kind of brings up some of the concerns that we've had about things that will stay around after COVID, around surveillance measures and other things that started because of COVID and may lead to ultimately a social change that we don't like and we don't want.
Yes, and some of them might involve technology, that might involve software, so that's why it belongs in the Yahoo Answers section on computers and internet/software, right?
Potentially, yes. Potentially. I mean, in the UK, the most obvious one is probably around vaccine passports, because the UK has been so persistently anti-ID. There's been a lot of conversation about vaccine passports, which would be you go to a venue, a pub, a shop, whatever, and you say, here is my health status. And there has been some concern about that as a forefather for a form of ID sticking around. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it's too early in the day for me to be drinking to answer that specific question about vaccine passports. We should have a separate podcast where I do have tequila with me, where we can talk about that in great detail.
Nice. I'm holding you to that.
Oh, yeah. And with keywords where every time it's mentioned, I have to drink.
Yes, that would be great. But Debbie Conley asked in Computers and Internet Hardware, Laptops and Notebooks 4 weeks ago, Is it dangerous to soak your feet while working on your laptop? I think the concern is dropping your laptop in the water, I think. The good news is you're probably fine, unless your laptop's plugged in. Your laptop might get hurt, but you're probably fine. You're not going to electrocute yourself dropping your laptop.
I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know on that one. And for what it's worth, Subhadeep responded just as you did, pretty much, which is, yes, it is quite dangerous. You might accidentally drop your laptop in water. So that's certainly a risk. But I don't know. So I have a MacBook, like the big ass one, plugged in right now. And when I touch parts of it, it vibrates. And so I can feel the charge.
Well, this is the thing. So if it's plugged in, the laptop itself is probably not going to electrocute you. The brick probably would. That's the difference. And this one I wasn't sure about, so I double-checked with our lead technologist. Because I was like, oh, you could electrocute yourself. And he said broadly, the laptop itself isn't going to do you much damage, but if it's plugged in, the brick definitely can. So don't have your laptop plugged in if you're going to be using it.
Near water.
And also you're going to fry your laptop. Although, having said that, I have a Mac, I still have it somewhere, that is now 11 years old, that has survived everything. And I've dropped it downstairs, I dropped it on my foot once, which, if you are soaking your feet and you drop your laptop on your foot, it's flipping agony. My feet weren't in water, but I dropped it on my foot, and it has a dent in its case to this day, from where it struck me. But it survived.
I feel like there's a lawsuit in the making there, because nowhere in the packaging does it say "do not drop on your feet."
It was really painful, but I also dropped it down the stairs, and it survived that. I got some coffee on it on the keyboard, and now all of the keys on the side don't really work. So 1 doesn't work, Q doesn't work, A doesn't work, backspace doesn't work, Z doesn't work. But it's actually it's more usable than it sounds because you get used to it. And I was using it at the time all through university. So
with your vocabulary severely limited.
Well, no, what you do is you always have an A copied and pasted ready to go, and you just get used to Command Ving it instead of typing A. And I can touch type, but eventually it just gets embedded in, and then you hand the laptop to someone else, and then you just sit there and you smile at them, and then it creeps them out, but it is a good time. Yeah.
I once spilled olive oil on my laptop, which now a colleague at PI has to use, and it's legendary. Oh, you're on the olive oil laptop. Yeah.
Oh, dear. The next one's quite interesting. The next one is a bit more on topic, because Doug asked in Computers and Internet Software about a week ago, how do I screenshot another person's phone? So I noticed while at work recently that my supervisor took a screenshot with his phone of the screen of the scanner device I use for my job. I'm not talking about how he just takes a photo with my hand holding the device and it shows the screen. No, this is like the actual screen of my device that was taken a picture of. Is there an app I can go to do the same thing? I'm interested in learning about it.
So that's interesting, because the question isn't this something happened to me and it was a gross invasion of my privacy. The question was, something's happened to me, can I do it to others?
Yeah. And the answer is probably no. The answer is probably, this is a device you use at your work. Your boss has access to it. Bear in mind, your boss has access to it. Don't be getting drunk and scanning your butt on this scanner. If it's a document scanner, you're getting in trouble. And workplace surveillance, actually, particularly because of COVID, is something we've been seeing more and more, and something we've been investigating, because having access to the scanner is kind of one of only a myriad of ways that your boss may have started trying to surveil you. Yeah, fun times. Amazon are particularly aggressive about this sort of thing. And actually, in terms of non-workplace surveillance devices to access someone else's phone, they do exist, and they're mostly used in kind of domestic control situations. So if you're worried someone does have access to your phone and it's not for this kind of fairly easy to put together reason, we've got some resources on our website. It would definitely be worth talking to someone like an organization like Women's Aid, who can help you, because the kind of controlling partner who is looking at your phone or is installing things on your phone so they can keep tabs on you is not a charming person, to put it extremely mildly.
I think I read over the Christmas break, Apple or Google, or maybe Apple and Google both announced that they're going to try to make it easier for people to detect whether or not their phones have had software installed that would allow for this capability without their knowledge.
Yeah, I think they've been added to, at least Google has this thing called Play Protect, which kind of scans your phone and the apps that have been downloaded. And I think the plan was to include this in that, but I don't know.
But just on the question of like scanners very specifically, like if there's a scanner in your office, this is a fascinating thing. Like I recall there was case law and examples in the 1990s and 2000s about how photocopiers would store copies of whatever it is that they're photocopying. And this was particularly in workplace environments. But there was also this whole thing about photocopiers and possibly scanners as a result too, not being able to scan some things such as currency or IDs. And that was because of legal requirements in the US and all this kind of stuff. We don't worry about those things in particular when we talk about a scanner at work. We just consider our printers and scanners to be the most insecure device in the whole network. So we use them with great care and disdain.
Well, what we've kind of done with our printer accidentally at the office from memory, because we haven't been there in like a year, but what we'd recently, a new development was it refused to let you print remotely. So you had to for a while transfer everything to your USB, make sure it was a USB the printer got on with, because it didn't get on with all of them, and go take that to the printer and print that. Whether that would have stopped someone hacking the print queue, I don't particularly necessarily think so, but
probably not. And the fact we're using USBs as a device going around from computer to computer and printer, it's a horrible thing. But yeah, that's just the reality of the PI network. Yeah. So secure that it's useless to the point where it might actually be a security threat.
I'm not sure even that was a security thing. I think it's just that printers are awful. All printers are dreadful. They suck.
Yeah.
There is no good work printer. Like, even if it's a good one, eventually everyone will hate it so much it's a bad one, even if it's working comparatively quite well.
And we have a lot of lawyers at PI, and they like using printers.
Oh, I love using printers. I like writing things down.
I hate printers. Wow.
I print out. One thing I've liked doing with drafts of work is printing it out and then red penning myself. So I'll write notes to myself, like it's homework on my own document, and then type that up.
That's sweet.
Shannon Stein asked in Computers and Internet Hardware Desktops 3 weeks ago, my computer won't turn on? I was on my iMac 2008 20-inch doing homework today, and suddenly I heard a loud popping sound and smelled smoke, and it exploded. I saw bolts and screws and the screen all explode and burst across the room, and the computer was just a charred up mess. What should I do? And the first answer is you could stop lying for a start. And a lot of the responses to this were like, how did you even post this if you don't have a computer? Which was bizarre, because although the computer was from 2008, we still have smartphones. Did we have smartphones in 2008? I think we did, even then. Many, many years ago. No, we didn't.
Just barely though, but yeah.
So this one might be total nonsense, but if you do overload the battery in a laptop or something like this, it can go quite badly wrong. It's not impossible for your laptop to explode. It is extremely unlikely.
Well, so what's interesting is that favorite answer that got like 6-star favorite answers. You could stop lying for a start. You, capital Y-O-U. You could stop lying for a start. And so this person who responded in this way was like self-righteously angry that somebody would post a question that sounds unreal.
Defame the good name of Yahoo Answers.
Exactly. And then what's even more interesting is that this person's response to the question, this self-righteous one, got 18 thumbs up. It's like there's a community of people who are outraged at the fact that this question was asked and rallying around the person who is accusing the person of asking the question of lying.
Which I think is harsh. Like, it's not outside the realm of human possibility. Although, if this has happened to you, my first question wouldn't be, my computer won't turn on, because it has exploded. Your computer has exploded. It's not going to turn on. You don't have a computer anymore. It's dead. You should get a new computer, and also investigate what happened, because if it's a problem with you, was it an electrical surge? Was it such a big electrical surge that it overloaded whatever it is internally and it blew up? In which case you might want to investigate the electrics in your house
Yes.
before you plug anything else in, because that is concerning. But yeah, it's not completely impossible, and I hope you're okay if this happened. And if it didn't happen, then I think you live a strange life that this is something that you decided to post on Yahoo Answers.
Where there were 15 answers to it. 15 answers.
A lot of which were just like, yeah, whatever, you're a liar. Which seems very mean. And like, for example, remember those Samsung phones that kept setting on fire? That you couldn't take on airplanes?
That's a real thing. It
does happen. And 2008, I don't know what year it is. 2021? 2021.
Yes.
That was 13 years ago. Was it 13? I guess I think I'm losing my mind.
It is 13, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, that laptop itself could be in high school by now. Although it doesn't feel like that old.
It's funny. I studied computer science back in the 1990s, and that was just as laptops were becoming a thing. But in order to do your homework, you'd have to go to the computing labs and sit in the computing labs late at night doing the coding homework and preparing for the exams. And there'd be times where my code just wouldn't compile because I was a really bad wannabe computer scientist. And there were times I would just stare at the screen and will for it to explode, just because if it's not working at a software level, it must be not working at a physical level, because it can't possibly be me. That's the fault behind it.
Back when my mum was in university, and my mum is 63, so it was some time ago that she was in university, she took a computing class. She was like, this is going to be important. She took a computing class, and she told me that it was like this massive computer, like size of a room computer, huge. And she and her mates, they got told simple task, like make a card and get it to print. Like those the two things she had to do. They managed to set it on like an endless loop, and they broke the computer very badly. Endlessly trying to print birthday cards. So my mother did kind of destroy a very huge and probably at the time extremely expensive university computer.
That's awesome. She should have put that on Yahoo Answers. That would have been a great one.
Please help.
How can you make a birthday card without destroying a room full of computers?
Yes. When I was a kid, we had one in the kitchen. Until I was about 16, we had a computer in the kitchen, this big cathode ray tube thing.
Oh, yeah. Which could explode. Like, that's a tube that actually can explode.
And we used to sit there in the end of the kitchen doing all of our, word art, Barbie horse riding games. It was a weird time. The computer has such visceral, sense memories of the way it, felt and smelled, because it was, I don't know, weird. Anyway.
And that was back in the day when parents would buy computers for their kids, thinking that it would just naturally make them smarter. Remember that?
Well, we had BT Internet, which was fine, but my friend had AOL, and AOL had forums, AOL had better internet, shinier things came with AOL, and I was extremely jealous. Anonymous asked in Computers and Internet, other Internet, and this is important, 2 weeks ago, what is wrong with my computer? Windows 98 is acting strange? My computer has progressively lost functionality, working worse and worse over time. A couple of years ago, AOL quit working to log in, and I stopped getting the "Welcome, you've got mail" message when I went online in AOL 4.0. I then had to try and get online another way and was able to get a neighbourhood kid to install a radio antenna on my computer, plugged into the scanner port and connect some sort of box to the phone line, then this blue-black box with rabbit ears on it. I then called the phone company to set up internet, and they told me I couldn't use AOL, and how there was Outlook and Internet Explorer which we used instead of AOL 4.0. The internet works like crap, and most sites still don't load an Internet Explorer, and Outlook 97 doesn't work with the new email systems very well. It doesn't say welcome and say you've got mail anymore, and I can't get my email anymore. What happened? What could be wrong? So many things could be wrong, my guy.
I'm just flabbergasted. Like, if this was real, I just love the reference to get a neighborhood kid. That is just so how we would speak in the 1950s. But if it's not real, how much research did this person have to do to find out what was the name of the email application on Windows 98? Was it Outlook 97? Was Internet Explorer on Windows 98? Or was it called something else at the time? That just blows my mind. Either a lot of work went into crafting a fake question with limited gain other than the fact we're discussing it, or it's a real question written by, somebody who's enjoying AOL.
I mean, the serious answer is please upgrade your operating system. In general, upgrade your operating system when offered, or pretty much when offered, because security patches are important. This arguably is security through obsolescence, because no one's trying to hack Windows 98 anymore. Yeah, so the serious answer is, my guy, please update your stuff, because you're quite vulnerable otherwise.
You say that, but wasn't that the whole NHS fiasco? Wasn't it Windows 98?
Well, so the thing with the NHS, and actually I used to work for a hotel when I first moved to London, and what they had as well was they bought the software way back when, and to update it for every single computer they have, A, would cost a fortune, and B, for the NHS, things need to be down for that to happen. It's quite difficult to coordinate all of those updates such that the systems that are asynchronously updating can still communicate with each other. The hotel was just cheap. They just didn't. They had a booking system designed for like 98, and they did not want to update it. So yes, then the NHS got hit with WannaCry, whatever I think it was called, which was a ransomware, and got locked out of some of their systems, and it was really quite scary. So my partner's dad, who is really lovely, has an accounting system called Quicken 98, I think.
I remember Quicken, yeah.
That he still uses, and every time Windows updates, he calls my partner and goes, "It's not working anymore. What do I do?" So now his accounting software is largely run in a VM because it's so out of date. It's so completely does not communicate with anything that it's the only way to make it run. And he is sticking with it. It is a very good accounting software, apparently. I'm
mildly jealous because, like, the whole idea of a piece of software has to run within an operating system of its own. I think that's quite revolutionary. But I think I'm betraying some of the security of our own systems. But because of our online banking, in order to pay staff salaries and all these other things, we have to use software that isn't updated as quickly as operating systems are, and it is infuriating. So it does remind me of the Quicken situation, having to wait for these things to be updated. So I am sympathetic.
But then in some ways, the fact that it's lasted so long as compared to some phones and kind of modern hardwares and softwares, that it has lasted so long, so, quote unquote, well, given it has to be in its own VM, is a pretty good sign. Like, we're going to have more work coming out later in the year that talks about the environmental impact of planned obsolescence and all of these kind of other things. But yeah, so broadly, it's nice that you've made it this far, but update your shit. And if it's not real, which, to be honest, feels like the most likely answer, then nicely done. So next question. Anonymous asked in Computers and Internet Software 3 months ago, could a computer run forever and never break, ignoring the fact its processing power wouldn't cope with newer software over time, which is related, and I thought was really interesting. And the top answer, which was not the favourite answer, but was the top answer, all circuit paths wear out over time with use. If it sat in the closet and never got used, then it might last longer, but if it's being used, it will die one day. And I guess on like a physical level,
it will die one day. Capitals.
Everything dies one day.
It will die one day.
And like, archaeologically, there are things that we built many years ago that are dust now, all things. From dust it came, to dust it will return.
Oh my good God. Wow, that's poetic. I was going to dumb this down by referring to a Star Trek Next Generation episode where they were traveling and they ran into an Earth ship that was like a few hundred years old. And they were still able to turn the machine back on, the computer system back on. And it was running an Intel 986, which is funny because when Star Trek Next Generation came out in the 1990s, the whole concept of a Intel 986, because Intel chips were famously 86 and then 186 and then 286, 386, 486. So Star Trek writers imagined that by the time we were able to fly among the stars, we'd have Intel 986 chips. Yeah, and they would still work 300 years later when you turn on the ship again.
Well, if you look at the designs we've sent into space of things we want to last a while, like we go rudimentary, we go backwards. Is it Voyager that has the disc on it?
Yes.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Bonjour tout le monde. Здравствуйте. Приветствую вас.
Yeah, so what it is it's a very old-fashioned, like, record, I guess, that's designed to be used almost by a phonograph?
Yes.
Yep.
Record player.
Yes, a record player. I was reading an article the other day that was saying they got a woman because they thought in the future people would be able to read brainwaves. So they recorded this woman's, from the team of people, Carl Sagan's team of people who were putting together what was going to go on it. They recorded her brainwaves as she kind of read poetry and all sorts of things. But she just at the time, she and Carl Sagan had fallen in love. And I think he'd just proposed, or they'd just decided to get together or something. And it makes her really happy that somewhere in space is like a record of her brain kind of first falling in love, which is lovely. It's really sweet. And the hope is that the older style records, physical technology that can be physically read, one day might get seen by aliens.
Wow. That's a
really
great
cool
story.
I'll put the link somewhere because it's really lovely.
It's a nice contrast to where you started this conversation, which is it's all going to die and turn to dust.
Well, I think it's harder. Things take longer to turn to dust in space. Which is why...
Really? I guess, yeah, there's no oxygen, so it can't quite...
No oxygen. Very cold.
Yeah, very cold.
So you're in no oxygenation, and you're in a freezer. But I wonder how long Elon Musk's car will last, and how soon it will come that he blasted into space, and whether it will work. That's a good question. It won't work once it, comes careening back down to Earth as so much space junk.
Space junk, Jesus, exactly.
Future Caitlin, just popping by because I realised I didn't really explain who the woman was when we recorded this podcast. Her name is Andrian. She's an Emmy and Peabody Award-winning science communicator, and she was actually the creative director of NASA's Voyager project. So she wasn't just a random woman in the team, as I think I might have a little bit made it sound. We'll include a link to the story I originally read in the description, but there's also a Radiolab podcast episode that I'll also include a link to because it's lovely. Okay, back to the actual podcast.
Next question. Why won't my printer print GIFs properly? Now I took a screenshot of this and I've cut off where it got put, so I can't tell you who said it or where they put it, but one of the very mean answers that is actually the third answer, but is by Spock RHP level 7, depends on the GIF, not the printer, which is really mean. Most of the other answers are like, you can't, it's not going to work, but that one's like, get the right GIF. To be fair, if you printed out every single frame, taped them together in a flick book, bang, printed GIF. So it's not impossible. It's just a ton.
Yeah, that's
of
what
work.
the second answer says. The GIF is more like a series of images than a single image. You must first extract the image you want from the GIF and then save it as JPEG, PNG, and finally print it. It's a really thoughtful answer.
They're saying pick a single frame. Yeah. They're saying pick the image you want from the GIF. I'm saying pick all of the images from the GIF, print like 100 different individual pages, and then use them like a flick book.
And now you know why the PI printer doesn't work very well.
Oh, dear.
Our printing budget actually every year is in the thousands of pounds. Now I think it's because of you, but actually it's mostly because of our lawyers.
Anonymous asked in Computers and Internet, Facebook, my grandson denied my Facebook request on Facebook? And then
my grandson denied my friend request.
Oh, my friend request on Facebook. Yes. Most of the answers are quite sweet and sympathetic. One just says, maybe because of privacy, which is a bit harsh. Like, I don't think the grandparent is trying to snoop, but I also think maybe your grandson is posting things on Facebook they don't want you to see. If you're in this situation, you can do what I did to my parents when I was about God, how long has Facebook been around? When I was about 14, 15, which is you can exclude specific people from seeing your posts unless you specifically include them. So my parents were excluded from seeing any of my posts unless I specifically said on that post that they could see it. Because both my parents friended me on Facebook, and although I did nothing interesting, like nothing interesting at the time, this was before I could really drink, so there were no interesting posts, no interesting pictures, but I was like, no, unacceptable. You do not need to see the cool things I'm up to.
It is interesting, that dynamic. So I left Facebook about 7 or 8 years ago, and a few weeks later, I get a email from my mom that's in all caps, which I was impressed. My mom knew that all caps meant she's yelling at me. And so she yelled at me saying, "Why did you unfriend me on Facebook?" And saying, the 7-year-old in me came out immediately said, sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just I'm no longer on Facebook. And then she didn't respond.
My dad did the same thing. My dad stomped downstairs. I hadn't unfriended him. I think he just misread something, but at the time he had only had 2 friends on Facebook, and it was me and his one other friend. So I don't know how.
So the other friend left.
Maybe, but he stomped downstairs and says, "You've unfriended me on Facebook. I'm undadding you. I'm undadding you until you've refriended me on Facebook." I was like, don't know what that means.
Poetically, that's just dangerous use of language. Wow.
One time, I'd gotten myself in a complicated romantic situation in university, and someone had set me as their girlfriend on Facebook, which I most certainly was not. And Facebook hadn't asked me if this was something I wanted to happen. And my friend had texted me like, "Oh, I didn't know you got a boyfriend." I was like, "I don't. What are you talking about?" And the only way around it was I had to set my relationship status in a relationship with someone else. So I set my relationship status as engaged, or as married to my flatmate, because, whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're not in a relationship. It's to get out of this other situation. But my mum still texted me like, "Oh, I saw you're married on Facebook, just to check. Did you get married?" And it's like, "No, Mum. No, I did not get married."
I love the contrast in response between your dad stomping down over just the loss of a friendship versus your mom being so just curious about whether or not you're married.
Just to check. Did you get married and not invite me? I think she was trying to be accepting, because I came out as bi to my parents in late high school, and I think after that she was just like, "Ooh." Because at the time, it's a really funny story, because at the time, I told my mum, I told my sister, and they talked about it, and my sister told my mum, "Oh, don't worry, she's just joking," which is an insane thing to joke about, but apparently I have a very, comedic face. And my mum later came to me and said, "Are you joking?" So I think after that, with all the kind of faintly gay stuff, she was like, "I'll just err on the side of caution. I'll just err on the side of you're being serious. Did you get married?"
Oh,
no,
my.
Don't worry about it. Next question. Is Facebook illegally using your device processor? And the favourite answer here, which only has 1 of the available stars, I believe, you're giving access of your whole phone data when you have installed that app. They can do anything if they want to because you have already given them permission. Which is wrong. It's good news. That is wrong. Facebook is almost certainly not illegally using your device processor. In most situations, when you install an app, generally it will ask you for the significant or dangerous permissions in terms of access to kind of important parts of your phone. It has to ask you. The thing about this, when this is not the case, is when the app came pre-installed. So on some phones, there is a version of Facebook, particularly often Facebook Lite, and you'll buy the phone and it will already be on there. When the phone has come with the app already, it means whoever put the app there, whether it was the manufacturer, your telecoms company, whoever, they got to designate the permissions that the app gets. You don't get to choose. And this is something we've done a lot of work on, particularly around Android phones and later in the year, other kinds of phones. But it's a problem, and it's particularly a problem on people with kind of lower cost phones. So we did an investigation last year into a Filipino phone that did come with Facebook Lite. So no, Facebook isn't illegally using your device processor, but if your phone comes pre-installed with Facebook, you can't control what it kind of has access to in your phone and what permissions it has been given. You have limited choices here. Try and avoid buying a phone that comes pre-installed with Facebook is the best advice I can kind of give you. And come to our website and read more about it and help us campaign for a better ecosystem with better protections for people when it comes to pre-installed apps, because it sucks that you would buy a new phone, not be able to choose what apps are on it, and not be able to kind of control what they have access to. But yeah, so good news, bad news, I guess, with that one.
It's the last one, and we don't have the metadata on when the question was asked, but it is, does the government hack our computers? And like, it blows my mind that this question is being asked. It's a great freaking question. Mm-hmm. And so John, 2 weeks ago, responds, the government is watching you right now through your webcam. If you look closely enough into the lens, you will see the tiny face of an NSA operative looking at you and making notes. Give him the finger, then place some sticky tape over the lens. And I got 3 thumbs up.
I would give that a thumbs up. I'm a fan of that, John. It's not 100% accurate for obvious reasons, but good job, John.
Yeah.
And he's right about the sticky tape in general. Like, it's not bad security practice to stick some sticky tape or a little webcam cover over your webcam, although not necessarily because the government's coming to hack you. But yeah, I think the history of PI is that yes, the government does hack our computers. Even if it doesn't hack your computer individually, it hacks a lot of shit.
Yeah, and look, many people and organizations have the capacity to hack, as in maliciously attack your computer and make it do things you don't want it to do, such as turn on the camera or the microphone or delete all your data, put it under a ransomware, and do all those things. The fact that the government does it is particularly annoying when the government's supposed to make sure that all of our computers are secure. But I really wish that if I looked closely enough into my camera, I could see that NSA operative or whatever intelligence agencies across the planet who can do this, or your next door neighbor who could set it up in a way to do it, which is why we care about security so much.
Talking of government hacking, we recently won a court case about general warrants, which are particularly interesting when it comes to government hacking. And we did a whole podcast about it, and you can listen to it right after you listen to this one. I think it's called Judgment Day, and it is in our feed, and I will put it in the show notes. Cool. We hope that helped everyone on Yahoo Answers, obviously, who asked these questions.
What do you think the overlap is of our podcast audience and the people on Yahoo Answers?
It's a good question. I hope large. I like Yahoo Answers. I think Yahoo Answers is a really sweet, nice place. Broadly, I think anywhere on the internet where people sincerely go to ask questions and people sincerely try and help them, and there are a surprising number of those places, is a nice place, and I think it's sad we're losing it. Because although some of these questions are, funny, and there are loads of memes going about the number of different ways people spell pregnant on Yahoo Answers, ultimately, when people don't know who to ask a question, they don't know where to go to, they don't have anyone in their life maybe they can ask, or it's a bit weird, and they're not really sure, they don't want to be ridiculed, they can take it to Yahoo Answers, but they can't anymore, and I think that's a bit sad.
God, Caitlin, that's really touching. That's beautiful.
Or we've got Quora, which is, I don't really know the difference, to be totally honest, but, there we go. Goodbye,
You make
Answers.
me want to go online and start answering questions just as a human being, just to go out and help people. That's really such a touching thing. But, oh well, Yahoo fucked it all up. And now, like much of the internet,
Yahoo.
This is how things die. We hope that helped.
Yes. We hope that helped. We hope that was a decent eulogy to Yahoo Answers, which is saying goodbye now, forever, but you will be able to find it, apparently, on the Internet Archive, who have stepped up to help out. Because internet history is somewhat ephemeral, but it deserves some record. So thank you for listening. We hope we were helpful.
And quick last thing, we're still running our survey, which you can find at pvcy.org/TP survey or down in the description as usual. It would be amazing if you could fill it out. If you're one of the lovely people who've already filled it out, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Your feedback is really useful. And if you're the person who included a lovely compliment about me, thank you very, very much. It made my weekend. Complimenting me is not a requirement of the survey, but it's appreciated. So yeah, the survey is available at pvcy.org/TP survey, and it really will help us to make the show that bit better. Thanks.
You can find out more about PI and our work at privacyinternational.org. And we'll include some links to the relevant Yahoo Answers and other information that we raised in this podcast in the description wherever you're listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you use. It's also available on our website. Music is courtesy of Sepia. This podcast was produced for Privacy International by Max Burnell.